Well, I'm sorry that I'm running a little late today. You now get to see a different room in my house because I've moved the computer. We're gonna get started with viruses. So, if just to kind of contextualize what a virus is in a way you might have seen on TV, if you have ever seen a snarling dog on TV, a mad dog with rabies, you have seen something that is supposed to be a dog suffering from a virus. The rabies that, sorry, a dog with rabies would be a dog with a virus that affects the dog's brain, causing these mad behaviors, spasms around the throat. Infected animals will avoid water. They've actually called the disease hydrophobia, meaning fear of water. In the 1800s, if someone was bitten by a dog with rabies, they would likely die. But then Louis Pasteur, who we've learned about in a previous episode, found a cure. Um, he said, whoever gets bitten by a mad dog only has to submit to my 3 little inoculations, and they have not the slightest fear of hydrophobia or rabies. So Louis Pasteur, important man, invented one of the first cures for viruses. So let's get into viruses a little bit more. Now, viruses technically aren't living. They are a tiny, non-living particle, tiny, tiny speck, right? So small you can't see it if you wanted to. It enters a living thing through the cell membrane, and then it makes that cell reproduce viruses. It hijacks cells and makes them churn out more viruses. That's what they do. Viruses are non-living. They have a protein coat. If you look at the picture, you can see the protein coat. It's in white. That protects their own genetic material, so they have DNA inside. And they cannot reproduce on their own. Viruses are considered non-living because they lack important characteristics of living things. They do not grow, they do not use their energy, they do not respond to their surroundings in any way. They cannot make or take in food, and they don't produce waste. Viruses are tiny specks that latch on to existing cells and force those cells to make more viruses by changing the DNA inside. That's what a virus is. The virus needs an organism. They call it a host. It enters and multiplies and multiplies. This is why when you get sick, before you start to get treated, you'll get worse because there's more and more viruses building up in you, causing more and more symptoms. The host provides the energy for the virus like another organism. If you've ever heard of a parasite, an organism that lives in or on a host and causes it harm, that is very similar to what a virus is. Almost all viruses destroy the cells in which they use to reproduce. Viruses can be round, shaped like rods, bricks, threads, bullets, tiny robots. Be curious to see what the tiny robots one looks like. I didn't know about that. Viruses are so small they're measured in a unit called nanometers. So really, really tiny. The average virus is smaller than the smallest cells you might see. After a virus attaches to a host cell, it enters the cell and starts to hijack its functions. It takes over the control room and just makes that cell do what it wants it to do. It instructs the cell to produce more of the virus's protein shell and its genetic material, and then forces that cell to assemble those pieces into a new virus. Although viruses have many shapes and sizes, all have 2 basic parts: an inner core with its genetic material, which can be DNA, can be RNA. Remember, we learned about that with nucleic acid. And it has a protective coat to go around that DNA to help it go somewhere else. Each virus on its protective coat has these little keys. They're calling them surface proteins, and they are. They essentially find other cells to lock onto, grip into, and put their DNA and infect them and make that cell make more viruses. But only certain cells. Viruses can cause disease, but scientists have recently found a way to make them treat disease. Some viral diseases pass through the body quickly, and some are more serious, whereas cold versus AIDS, some are serious that your body can't sort out, and some are less serious. The flu is a more serious virus. Viruses can cause diseases in organisms other than humans, and if that virus causes a disease in something other than humans, it doesn't necessarily cause a disease in humans. Dogs and cats have their own viruses, so do trees, so do plants, so do grass, right? All of these things can be infected by a virus, and they all have different viruses. Scientists have learned how to how to how to use the virus's skills against it. In gene therapy, they oftentimes use a virus to deliver genetic material into cells because viruses go attach to cells and put whatever's in them into the cell. So if scientists control what's inside the virus, they control what DNA goes into the cell. A vaccine is something different. A vaccine is a substance that you put into your body to get your immune system ready to fight specific viruses. A lot of times that vaccine is made of a dead or weakened virus, so it won't cause you to get sick, but it will kickstart your immune system and let your immune system get ready to fight it by giving you antibodies before you even get that virus. So hopefully the antibodies will be in you before the virus gets in you, so they'll get it and kill it before it makes you sick. This is the idea behind the flu shot that you hopefully get almost every year. So that is all there is in viruses. We're going to move on and get through bacteria as well because it's a short little lesson. These are tiny, tiny organisms, and I want to get to the frog dissection as soon as we can. So lots of people believe that all bacteria are harmful. This is just not true. There's lots of harmless and good bacteria. In fact, in you, you have good bacteria. Bacteria helps your intestines digest some of your food. Often you'll hear probiotics like yogurt or pills, smoothies, and cereal. Eating food containing these probiotics keeps you healthy, keeps good bacteria in you, and can help fight off bad bacteria that might cause you disease. So, bacteria are a little more complicated. These are your smallest living organisms, and you can find them everywhere. They live under rocks, in the oceans, in people's bodies, on your desk, on doorknobs, I'm sure you've seen. They're everywhere. They are prokaryotes, meaning they do not have a nucleus. The genetic material in their cells is just kind of free-floating in the middle. They lack many of the cell structures that are found in eukaryotes. They don't have ribosomes, or really, actually, they probably do have ribosomes. They do have ribosomes. They don't have endoplasmic reticulum. They don't have nuclei. Doesn't look like they have mitochondria. Any of those organelles we talked about when we talked about cell structure, they really just have ribosomes. They are surrounded by a cell wall. It is a membrane, or it is a hard surface around the cell membrane to help protect bacteria. Inside that cell wall, there's a cell membrane, and inside the membrane we have cytoplasm, which is a gel-like. It's got little fibers running through it. Think of it like Jell-O. I think that's the easiest way. And it has these tiny little specks called ribosomes, which are these chemical factors that produce proteins. Some have different ways to move. A flagellum, you'll see in this picture, is a long whip-like tail that helps it move. Most bacteria are spherical, meaning tiny balls. Some are rod-shaped, like the one you see in the picture. And some are spiral, which are really crazy looking. It's a shame they don't have a picture. Most bacterial cells... reading sentence twice, sorry. The cell wall's chemical makeup determines the bacterial cell's shape. So the cell wall is what's going to determine what shape the bacteria is. An average bacteria is smaller than a period on a piece of paper. Too far. Bacteria get their energy all kinds of ways. They can be autotrophic or heterotrophic, meaning they eat things, or they produce energy from the sun. They can reproduce using either sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction. They can make their food using the sun's energy or use chemicals in the environment. Sometimes they consume other things or the food of those things. Things like milk, meat, decayed leaves. They can break down a lot of different stuff that you can't eat. The process of breaking down food to release energy is called cellular respiration. With plenty of food and suitable conditions, bacteria thrive and then reproduce because there can be more of them. Sometimes bacteria reproduce without changing their DNA at all. It's called binary fission. Essentially, you have one, and it breaks off and becomes two identical bacteria. Sometimes bacteria exchange DNA with others, and they use something called conjugation by taking some of its genes and putting it into another bacteria, and that bacteria breaks off and forms more bacteria that have this new DNA. Bacteria are more free with how much DNA is in them because they're not very complicated. They have a couple thousand genes. I think they only need 47. They've done some studies to see there's really only 47 genes essential for life, but bacteria can have anywhere from 47 to 20,000 different genes in them. Bacteria are unique in that they can survive harsh conditions by going into like a stasis. They form endospores. Essentially, they turn into really thick, let's call them almost like pills. Imagine like a pill bug curling up, only this pill bug then decides to drain all the water out of it, get really thick-walled, and wait until the environment around it is suitable again for the bacteria to live. So there are a lot of diseases and infection caused by bacteria. I'm sure you know this. These are treated by antibiotics. So viruses are not treated by antibiotics, but bacteria can be. Antibiotic literally means biotic means living, anti-living things. Viruses are not living things, so you wouldn't treat them with antibiotics. There are many bacteria harmless to people and some helpful. Bacteria are involved in oxygen and food production, as well as health maintenance, some medicine production, and environmental cleanup and recycling. There are bacteria that release oxygen into the air. There are bacteria that break down food. We have actually found ways to slow down bacteria breaking down food. Pasteurization is a method we use to kind of keep milk good a lot longer. You slowly heat food to a temperature high enough to kill the bacteria, but not high enough to mess up the food. And that, after you do that, you can seal that food with not a lot of bacteria in it, and it will last a lot longer. There are bacteria inside your body that help break down different things and can make vitamins out of your food that you can use. So they're more symbiotic. They help you, and you feed them, they help you. Scientists use some bacteria to make medicines and other things we use. Bacteria are used to clean up land and water. Well, they're not just used to, they do it. Decomposers are, well, they're all organisms, but some bacteria are decomposers, and they are what causes leaves to break down when they fall. They are what causes, trash to break down into base elements, anything to break down into more simple chemicals after they're dead. A lot of times bacteria has a hand in that. Interestingly enough, there is a kind of bacteria they are working on that will actually decompose oil, and they're trying to develop that, kind of trying to breed it to be more effective, so when there are oil spills, they can release this bacteria, so you don't actually have to clean up all the oil. The bacteria will break them down into something that isn't harmful for the environment. Quick little fact to end. 2 kilograms of your body weight, which is roughly 4 pounds, it's like 4.5 pounds, are actually bacteria. You can have up to 1,000 species of bacteria in your stomach and intestines, and that makes up that weight. So, I'm sorry this went out a little later than I intended. Hopefully you get a chance to watch this and answer the questions in the link. We'll talk about this if there are any questions tomorrow, and if you don't get a chance to do it, you'll have a chance tomorrow, but I really hope you get to it before then. Alright, thank you. Have a good night.